On this episode of the Digital Marketing Punkcast, we are talking about how to get noticed with your content on social, on your website, on anything digital, to be quite honest. And to do that, I am talking with Adam Hunt from White Label Comedy.
The Digital Marketing Punkcast.
Welcome to the active resistance against bad digital marketing. This is the Digital Marketing Punkcast. This is episode number 29, and it was recorded in June of 2020. Okay, so content, right? We all have to write content. We all have to make content. We all have to produce stuff on social media, on our websites and all this kind of stuff. But you know what really grinds my gears? The fact that a lot of content that we produce is just noise, right? It's just things that we want to say. It's just cold-hearted sales messages. And the fact is that one of the key mistakes is that we don't understand and get our audience. And our audience sometimes want to be engaged and they want to be entertained. So I thought on this episode of the Digital Marketing Podcast, I will talk to Adam Hunt, who owns and runs and is part of White Label Comedy, which is a company which provide a service of basically a hive mind of comedians and writers who will produce that content for you on your behalf that will engage and your audience how you would like them to be engaged with and how they would like to be engaged with. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Adam Hunt from White Label Comedy. Okay, here with me I have Adam Hunt from the White Label Comedy Company. Adam, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad, all good.
Good. Now, I've invited you on today because you have you essentially, your job is amazing because you essentially just sit in a sort of room, well, not a room at the moment, in a Zoom call full of comedians and just talk and sort of spit out ideas all day, every day. Is that not your job?
Do you know what? I'm not going to lie. I seem to have built a pretty fun world for myself. Yeah. It's not a bad place to be. That's for sure. They're hard to control, but it's a fun world to work in.
It's a monkey cage, I can imagine, in some cases. Yeah. Now let's explain what you do. So, well, why don't you do that yourself? Introduce yourself. What is it that you do exactly?
Why not? All right, look. So,
why not?
White Label Comedy is basically it's a company that evolved out of the two halves of my own career. Half of my life has been as a TV producer. Half of my life has been working in advertising and branded content. On the TV side, when you're lucky, you're swimming in comedy writers and they're helping you make a script funny. When you're not lucky, you're on your own. But either way, maybe half of that world was fun. And on the branded content side, loads of my clients would be clamoring for entertaining, engaging content, but well aware they couldn't afford it. And one thing that I knew was that all of the comedy writers that I've worked with, they are grossly overpaid while working in writers' rooms for panel shows, and then they're unemployed for 4 days a week. So they're desperately looking for a more flexible way to use their funny bones. So we paired the two together, and basically White Label Comedy exists to help brands entertain, engage, and sort of sell in a slightly less obvious way. Because I think one thing we can all agree is that saying buy this now doesn't work anymore, but entertaining us may work if you do it in the right way. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
But it's a really good point, and I think it really hits at something that we've got a real problem with. Because let's be honest, we went through the golden era of advertising in the 80s and the 90s on TV, where we had some fantastic, engaging copy and marketing and entertaining stuff, and we had Morecambe and Wise advertising cigars and people like that. And then we kind of got into the digital, modern, shiny new era, and then suddenly everybody just started to go boring again. Is there a symptom of something that we've come into here in this modern age?
Do you know what? I don't know whether it's a symptom of the modern age. What I do think it is let's separate TV and social for a second, because on TV you still do have some brands who are, they put money into their creative. There are funny ads. Some choose not to go with funny ads, but the funny ads still exist in that space. But funny ads are expensive because comedy writers are expensive. So I think when it comes to social, there are brands that are brilliant on TV that give us really, really great funny ads, but they don't know how to resource their social media teams to have anywhere like the same sort of tone of voice. So there's a real disconnect where they're just not following through that tone. I think you need so much content on social that you can't pay the price you'd pay for a 30-second TV ad and put that into a tweet. It's just not going to work. So yeah, I think people are also being more cautious, and there's lots of that, some of the times, etc. But I do think it's just that people don't really know how to do social, and I think they're sort of taking they're taking TV ideas and they don't know how to translate them into something that's meant for conversations.
I think I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're absolutely right with what you say. I think what we are symptomatic of is a little bit is we have a lot of how can I put this, copycats that go on that happen on social. So they see something, then they copy it and they try and do it themselves, but it doesn't quite work for them. But what we do have on social, we do have a lot of brands, and there are a lot of ones that spring to mind. For example, the brutal rivalry that we know about between KFC and is it Burger King or is it McDonald's, whoever it is, that brutal Twitter rivalry that they have, which is absolutely comedy gold in some cases. We do have certain brands that are out there that do a really good job creating a fantastic, engaging message on social media.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the thing. That's the difference between the brands that don't really know how to do social and the brands that are bossing it is that chasm is huge. But it's such a simple step. It's just look at what the rest of Twitter is doing. Look at what the rest of Facebook is doing, and just think, well, what's our brand's part in that conversation? Like you say, brands like KFC. I think McDonald's and Wendy's have a brilliant rivalry that I'm not convinced isn't fake. And innocent smoothies to show you like just how much this is all about nailing your audience and getting to know them. Innocent Smoothies, I don't know if they're still doing it, but for ages were just every day just tweeting, reminding us what day it was, and that was getting 100 times the traction of a well-crafted. You don't need to be a comedy writer to be funny and entertaining on social. You just need to be clever. You just need to, just think about it.
Absolutely. Let's draw this back, because I think you are right. There's a massive chasm between certain brands that do and don't do this, and I think there is a missing trick to be had. And I think some people are worried or scared that the people that do this are they're the big brands that do this, and I'm going to need. I'm not that creative. I'm going to need a lot of money to be able to get creative minds to be able to work on it and things like that. However, really, where we live in a social world, we don't need big bucks to be able to think in that way. But in order to strip it back, is there not an argument to be said that you need the right brand to be able to sort of carry this message across? For example, I can't see Co-op Funeral Care trying to carry this brand, trying to carry this message, because they're not going to carry it.
I think what's important is that you always start with your audience. Now, if you're trying to sell a hearse and a coffin, then the levers that are going to move that audience into action probably aren't based in the sort of sense of humor you can bring to the table. But it doesn't mean there isn't humor that Co-op Funeral Care could deploy. It's a great example. Right now, with everything that's going on in the world, no one's going to make jokes about coronavirus. Don't trivialize it, but make jokes about the relatable moments we're all finding ourselves in. And absolutely, those are what we need. And I think the same could be true for funerals. There are actually so many really relatable moments, things we all go through. And we're British. We love gallows humor. I think that Co-op Funeral Care could pull it off with the right team behind them. Obviously, that's the other thing, is do it wrong, and you're on a hide into nowhere. I think
Yeah.
that what recently what one brand that's really stuck out as doing committing the cardinal sin, as far as I'm concerned, which is just trying to be funny without having decided either what you're going to say or even how to think about who your audience are, is Snickers posted this tweet the other week that was just, so it was, they sort of mashed the keyboard and it was like straw poll, Welsh town name or something. And I found it funny, but it had nothing to do with them. It had nothing to do with their audience. It was a really poor choice. So long as you start with what's my message and then work out from there and go, sometimes the message can just be we're funny. So, but you need to have had that two-stage process. What is the message? All right, who's our audience? How are we gonna engage them? I think that's the thing that makes the difference. That's what moves the needle from danger to safety.
That's a really interesting thing. Let's go into that, because I think I trivialized it. I made a joke saying you spend your whole day sitting in a room or on a Zoom call at the moment in front of a load of comedians. What is that process? Like you say, you establish what your audience is. That's absolutely key. I presume that when you're working with clients, you ask them what is your audience. They probably already have that set in place. What is that process once you've established who that audience is going to be when you're sat there in that room?
Well, I think step one for us is we always have a sort of two-stage brainstorming process. So step one is to come up with lots of things we could talk about. So, again, because it's really important for the brand to be to be involving themselves in the conversations that matter to their audience. So you've got the audience. Now we make a big list of things that might matter to them. So, we recently did some work for an independent living community that I love them because they came to me and they said, look, we want to be sort of like the Grace, I don't know if you've seen the sitcom Grace and Frankie, but it's basically it is badly behaved older people that are unapologetic and empowered, want to be the Grace and Frankie of the independent living community world. So brilliant starting point to begin with, but so what you need is a big list of the different things that their audience might care about, and obviously they already had that big broad list, the NHS, pensions, blah blah blah, but we go into each of those in detail, and we just try and work out what might be of interest. What you end up with is basically a list of 150, 200 different sort of topics, subtopics that you can throw ideas at. We then again look, we choose the best, we choose the ones that we think are already topics that are going to resonate. I think another thing that really helps with this kind of comedy is topics where divisive topics can be useful, but you want to make sure that most of your audience has the same opinion, because then you can make a joke that lines up with what they believe in, and that makes it more likely for them to want to share it. So we'll choose the topics that we think work best, and then everyone throws jokes at it. Now we don't spend our life on a Zoom call. We sort of run it between Zoom and Slack. So we basically have buckets for every single kind of topic and topic area. Everyone throws their jokes in, and then we go through and we take the best and we finesse it. So it's really fun, silly world. And it's so funny. I'm not a writer, and that's one thing as well. Is I'm a producer by trade. I'm used to marshalling other people's funny ideas, which means that I'll sit there very seriously debating the merits of a joke, forgetting to actually laugh out loud, but just being like, "That's funny, yeah, that's funny." And it becomes, it's actually quite an objective process. It's not, we're not sitting there. It's not a laugh a minute. It's very functional. Is that good enough? Does it deliver on the are people going to want to share it? And then we crucially, we then take the very best and we give that to the client. So the client never sees what goes on inside our hive mind. That's top secret. They get the best 10%, because it means that we can throw shit at a wall, and you need to throw shit at a wall, because that's the comedy writing process.
Absolutely. And I think, and you know what, it's really interesting. First of all, first point to say, if you haven't watched Grace and Frankie, anyone listening, you should. It's one of the best comedies on TV at the moment. It's absolutely phenomenal. The other point was, I've been recently listening to the Scrubs podcast with Zach Braff and Donald Faison, and they're rewatching all the Scrubs programs, obviously with lockdown and all that kind of thing. It's really interesting to hear when Bill Lawrence comes on, who was the showrunner at the time, when he was talking about what the writer's room was like. And it sounds like that kind of process where you're just throwing stuff, you sit there, you throw stuff, you mull it over, you write stuff down, you go over it and go over it again, and ultimately it's the showrunner / producer that sits down and goes, yeah, this is funny, that's funny, I like this, no, I don't like this, we're going to move, we can change the perspective on this joke. And it sounds like that kind of process.
Yeah, do you know what? That's an analogy we've used quite a lot. We really, we do generate content like the Americans write sitcoms. I think that's the only analogy for it. And I think, it's something that it's only possible because we're remote.
Yeah.
We very deliberately, none of our writers are working like full time with us, and none of our writers work even a full day. It's our writers' room is designed to dip in, see what someone else has written, build on it, layer it up, crack on with your day. So we are able to get the most brain power collectively for with the least amount of input from anyone. And I think that's it sort of apes the American model, but on a very British budget for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the concept is fantastic. I truly mean it. I absolutely love it. And we're talking about it now, and I get excited about it, thinking about the possibilities, because I've got a range of clients that I work with on a day-to-day basis where I'm thinking, yes, absolutely. This audience that I try and work with for this client would absolutely in dire need of just some engaging content rather than the same old sales message tripe that they get time after time after time from the clients, say. And what is it? Is there something, data, information, stats that we know about where, if you are, and I'm sure there's been research done into this, throughout TV and all that kind of stuff, to say that if you create content which is funny, comedic, it's definitely going to engage you more than it is if you just, downright sales message.
Do you know what? So my favorite stat and my favorite example, it kind of sits halfway between an actual stat with some research and then my own inferences layered on top. Because I think we've been doing lots of our own research recently, just trying to, obviously, as you're well aware, marketing ourselves is as much of an interesting challenge as anything else. So trying to get heads around it. And one stat that I really sort of really resonated was just that I think it was from a book by a guy called Mark Schaefer called Marketing Rebellion, and it's basically that in terms, if you look at the total impact of your marketing, only a third of that comes from the things that you say about yourself, and 2/3 of it comes from the things that other people say about you. Now, what I love, and this bit is conjecture, but I fully believe it, and I'd love there to be a way to back it up with stats, is when we make a joke. If you post a joke, if I post a joke, if my brand posts a joke, that is a story we're telling about ourselves. So in theory, that falls into the less effective category. But the second someone else shares that, retweets it, reposts it, they're then telling a story about us. It's not just the content of the joke, but they're saying, hey, these guys are funny. They're saying you would enjoy this, to my followers. Now, the other really important thing here is that hidden in every joke, there's a hidden truth, right? So a joke is just two things that shouldn't fit together, but you've made them fit together with a cleverly placed twist. Our brains jump a gap. We enjoy that. We get a little spark of joy. That's why jokes work. That's the really boring comedy 101. Now, if you think of it in those terms, if you can make that hidden truth about you and your brand, so the hidden truth that gives you the twist, paints your brand in a positive light, then by giving someone a joke to share, not only are they telling your story and saying it awesome, they're also sharing that bit of good news about you. But even when all you're doing is making jokes about them and their world, they are still telling the story, these guys are cool. And I think there has been mountains of research that shows that trying to sell too soon before people have been warmed up to you, aware of you, before they're keen on you is useless. It's pointless. It's a waste of effort. And I think comedy is a huge part of that process. And also, I think really crucially, comedy gives you something to say. I think lots of brands struggle. What do we post if we're not saying here's the new Diet Coke can? Like there are other things. Instantly, it gives you a way to make your brand a part of any other conversation. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think what an interesting point I do want to share with, want to make is, when we're talking a lot now about a B2C kind of market, what must be a struggle for you as a group of writers and yourself is when you're targeting a kind of B2B market where their audience is going to be inclusive within their own sort of clique. They're going to almost have. How do you get into that sort of inside joke, because surely that's the avenue for that kind of content. How do you get? Is that through working with the client very, very closely?
Do you know what? It's all about deep research. I think, you know, we've just done a we sometimes for clients that aren't necessarily sure that we can deliver exactly what they need and their audience need. We do this thing called a simulated Twitter takeover, where we put together a website that shows them what their feed would look like if we were working with them. So that's sort of like
Oh, wow.
an entry level project, and we've just done that for a particular B2B client, and it was so they're a video editing software, quite a disruptive company, and we basically, you know, you find groups on Facebook that have the target audience in. You see what they're saying, you see what they're talking about. You know, you sit alongside them and you get those topics from them. I think, yeah, it's all about research. That's why it all comes down to the audience. You know, whether the audience is you know, middle-aged women that like washing up liquid, or whether it is 60-year-old, you know, CTOs that are going to want to buy an editing system to put in their, you know, some kind of media business. You just have to get to know them and then lean on that. And I think that's another thing that's great about the way we work is, you know, if you hired one comedy writer and said, hey, you know, hey Darren, can you write these jokes for this washing up liquid, Darren might struggle. But in our hive mind, in the, you know, in the 35 writers that we've got in the mix, there's always enough people that are in line with that demographic that can help steer the ship. And I think, you know, all you need is a couple of the voices that are most relevant, just to make sure that everyone else gets on board. And I think, you know, it's what good ideas snowball. So, you know, once you've nailed the audience and you've nailed jokes that are going to resonate, everyone goes, oh yeah, now I see. And then it becomes, again, actually more of a functional process than anything else.
It's really, really fascinating. It is really interesting to hear how that whole process works. And for me, I mean, I envy you massively. I think it's I think it's such an amazing environment to be in. The one thing I will, and I'll be absolutely hung out to dry if I didn't ask this question. Now that we've talked about it for 20 minutes, what are some of the best examples? You must have now a range of examples where you've worked with clients. And do you know what? In fact, you sent me something before this interview, and it was possibly the most entertaining email that I have ever had come through in a very, very long time, even during COVID, which has been an absolute regeneration in creativity for email marketing. But this one has been absolutely fantastic. Some of the examples that you posed, and also the development process, which you alluded to before, was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, please share some of the examples that you've come up with for clients in the past.
Do you know what? That's something that I'll avoid doing, and the reason for that is I will deliver every joke badly. It's these jokes are designed. We've been doing loads of our own video content recently for this launch we're gearing up for, and I'm having to deliver some of the jokes, and I get lots of takes, and I get to make sure that we nail it. But I think anyone that wants to see examples, go to our website, and you can see them in all their glory as they're meant to be, because I think written comedy and verbal comedy are very different. So that's my sneaky get out. But we've got a massive library of samples we'd love to share. So anyone that wants to have a look, come and have a look.
That's absolutely fair enough. That's absolutely the right thing to do if in that case, in that scenario. And I'm almost feel guilty for asking you in the first place. Adam,
don't you worry.
Adam, thank you. Well, no, one last question. I was going to, before you go, because there will be people listening that are going to go, okay, I really want to start thinking, and I think you've given some fantastic advice already throughout that. But if there was one takeaway, if there was one thing, for small businesses out there, or even, startups or whatever, that are thinking, I just want to make some of my, social a little bit more engaging, a little bit more comedic, a little bit more creative, what would be that one thing to think about, whether it be research or whether, what would it be, just to help people light that spark, I suppose?
Well, I think, do you know what? If they're already doing what they should be doing for the rest of their marketing, that in theory, that research should already be done. You should already know everything there is to know about your audience. If you're not, you're making a mistake to begin with. I think when it comes to injecting the humor, it's the easiest technique to lean on is just exaggeration, right? So just take something that is great about working with you or your brand and exaggerate it until it makes you laugh, or take a consequence of not having your brand or your product, your service, and again exaggerate that consequence until it makes you laugh. You've written your first joke. I think obviously there's more to it than that, but that's for sure the easiest route to turning a brand message into comedy is just exaggeration.
Which is interesting because one of my favorite books is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that's exactly how Douglas Adams worked with the start of Hitchhiker's Guide, where he said he kept pontificating on the question, well, I'm gonna demolish a house, what's the next? I'm gonna demolish the earth, and then what happens after you demolish the earth? And until it became funny, and that was his whole mental sort of train of thought throughout that process, which is fascinating. So yeah, that's a really good sort of technique and thing to work on. Adam, before I let you go, please let everybody know how they can find out more about you, about White Label, and how can they find out more about you?
Have a look on the internet, basically.
That's a good way to start.
Whitelabelcomedy.com is where you'll find all you need to find. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, but basically, yeah, we're luckily we're such an unusual company to exist that Google's quite savvy about sending you our way. So yeah, White Label Comedy is all you need to type into any of the internet and you'll find us.
And what have you got coming up? I know you've got something really exciting, which I think you should let people know. You even said before this, which is very, very kind of you. I'm not going to plug the hell out of this, but I feel like you should tell people about this.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Well, I think a big thing for us is everyone's world has changed in with all this shit that's going on at the moment, right? And I think so is ours. And I think until now we were very much all about monthly packages. For us to do our best work for people, we need to be working with them on a monthly basis so that we can keep improving month on month. But what we've realized is that everyone is in this sort of push-pull at the moment between the need to move forwards and do new things and just get in motion, because when the world finishes opening up again, they need to be moving forwards, and the need for cautious commitment and not overcommitting to stuff that they can't necessarily afford when they don't know what tomorrow looks like. So we've shifted our focus away from monthly packages. They're still there for those that want them, but we're launching our pay-as-you-go content packs. So really simply for brands that, or small businesses that are keen to just test the waters, commission us for a finite number of posts, whether it's 20, 40, 80, 160, and we deliver those, and then you just come back when you need more. I think, and already, the feedback we're getting from the fact that we're willing to do this and not insist on a monthly retainer from people is huge. So I think fingers crossed it's going to work. But I think, that's something, knowing your audience is really important. And right now our audience has changed because the world has changed. And I think, we've massively overhauled our own offering just to make sure that we can be as much use to the people that need us as we can. So yeah, that's what we're gearing up for.
And I will say this: he wouldn't share any with us, unfortunately, on the podcast. But I will say this: you need to go and check out some of the examples of his of you guys' work, because it's absolutely incredible, super funny. Some of the ones that I read earlier were just brilliant. So I do recommend that you go and check out some of the examples of you guys' work. It's been fantastic to read.
Awesome, thank you very much, Tom.
Adam, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope you have a fantastic, hopefully we all get out of this lockdown all in one piece, should I say. And you have a fantastic summer.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. You too. Been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that was Adam Hunt from White Label Comedy. Really interesting chat. I really enjoyed this idea and of just creating more engaging content for your users, for your audience, because I suppose it sounds like it's not that difficult, but I suppose in practice it really is quite difficult, and that's why they have those guys and that group of writers and those comedians with that hive mind attitude of putting ideas together, and I imagine it can be really, really difficult and quite stressful. But anyway, if you want to get in touch with them, you really, really should. I think the premise of how engaged that your content can be, if you apply some of those methods, is it really holds no bounds, really. Anyway, I'd love to hear your questions, your queries, your feedback about the show. So don't forget, you can get in contact with the Punkcast by emailing us, punkcast@dmpunk.co.uk, or you can connect with me across all social media. Find me on Facebook, facebook.com/IamDMPunk, on Twitter @IamDMPunk, on Instagram @IamDMPunk, and you can also connect with me on LinkedIn by searching for Digital Marketing Punk. It'd be great if you haven't done so already to subscribe to the Digital Marketing Punkcast. So do it, click subscribe, and if you really like the show and you really want to help me out and show your appreciation, which I'd love you to do, by the way, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, which is not called iTunes anymore. It's now called Apple Podcasts. So I don't know what it's called anymore. Anyway, just give us 5 stars. Wherever there's 5 stars, just provide them. Anyway, I hope you'll join me next time on the next episode of the Digital Marketing Punkcast. I'll see you then.